Okay, hello. That was fast. So I'm Christophe. I'm working for the GASAP network, and GASAP, I will say it in French because that's in French. So it means Groupement d'achat solidaire de l'agriculture paysanne. So it is one form of CSA, community supported agriculture, in the way it is practiced in Belgium, but also in other countries. But you have various forms of CSA. So we have, on the one side, a group of citizens that organize themselves together, and on the other side, a producer. And they make an agreement, a partnership agreement, that this group commits to take part of the production of this producer for a certain duration, usually at least 1 year, one full season. And in the other direction, this producer commits to produce local, seasonal, organic food that he will deliver on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to the group. The way to show the long-term commitment is that there is an advance payment. So the group organizes itself and they collect the money from all the eaters and they pay once every year, once every 6 months or once every 3 months, but there's always in advance. So they pay in advance, and if possible for the full year, but sometimes it's difficult. For social reasons, sometimes there are adaptations, but the idea is prepayment, only one payment, so that it's easier for the producer, there's less work, and it's for this long-term duration. The one thing which is central and essential is that there is a direct connection between the one who produces the food and the one who and those that eat the food. Each partnership is independent. It means that one group is in relation with one or more producers. There's no cross-responsibility among the different groups. We have, and it's in the wrong. We are organized in Belgium in a network. There's a network which includes the producers. So this is Belgium. It's very small, but we have producers from all around the country. Around 30 producers, of which 15 are vegetable growers. And we have about 90 groups only in Brussels. This is essentially in Brussels. And so the network is trying to make sure that there is overall coherence in the way things are being practiced by the groups and their producer, but we don't interfere in the direct relationship. The direct relationship, each partnership is independent, as I said earlier. How was this network built? Actually, the first 3 groups were created around 2006, and they knew each other. So there was direct contacts between the groups. Then in 2008 already there were 18 groups. And people started feeling that they were losing the connection between the people. And they said, hey, but we're doing the same thing, but we don't know each other anymore. How are we going to organize ourselves to make sure that we keep going together in the same direction? And so there was this, they looked for some funding, and there was one person to do at least information, the database that you were talking about, to start to know who is what doing where, etc. Then, little by little, it continued to grow, and I think in 2011 there were already 60 or 70 groups. And they, only at that time, so 5 years later, they said, okay, we need to build an organization. And it was created as an association. And that is also the time where they wrote a charter. What are our principles of working together? So until then, there was clarity in the minds of the people of what they were doing together, but it was not fully written or signed. It's only 5 years later. And I think it's interesting because it shows that it has to mature. What are we each doing and why are we in the same line? Eva mentioned documents that producers and consumers sign. When there was this official registration and this new charter, everybody, every group, every producer had to sign the charter saying, I will respect it. Okay, so it was not a PGS, but it was a commitment towards, I am part of this association and I will respect those principles. But only, let's say, so that was based on trust, and only in 2014 started the discussion on how are we going to check that everybody, or to ensure, not to check, to ensure that everybody is effectively respecting those rules. Before we go into PGS details, I just want to say, why is there a network? It's nice to ensure coherence, but what is the network doing? So there are three main tasks. One is to support the creation of new groups. We think it is a GASAP or CSA is an interesting model for developing agroecological, organic, quality farming and access to food. So the first is to support new groups creation. The second is helping in making the link between the producers and the eaters. This can also mean sometimes mediation, helping in the mediation between eaters and producer when there is a partnership that does not function very well. So we like a mediator. And the third part, which is sometimes the most visible, is that we participate in the public debate. What does it mean? It means that we follow what is happening and we try to make the new laws or rules or regulations to be adapted to this new or this alternative way of having access to food. It has an influence on public policy. So that's really where we're trying to work on. One concrete example from last year is there was a new regulation from the sanitary authority on transport of food by producers. And we successfully addressed the question with this authority, so it's an official administration, to say this cannot apply to it is good for the industry, but this cannot apply to CSA type of relationship. And because otherwise we would have had to stop because the rules were just done for industry and not, so we succeed to have an exemption for those sort of things. If we were not in a network, it would not have been possible. I will go rapidly on this. There are still challenges in CSA, like everywhere. One of them is low income of producers. The other is a lot of more and more industrial organic production. And there is one, and I think it's the same in all networks, is how far can we as citizens be mobilized on a regular basis? We all have another life than work or just food. So how to make this important part of our life, which is eating 3 times a day usually, how to be sure that it is getting the right level of mobilization in order for us to live better. And so that there's really an issue about mobilization of eaters and customers. In order to work on all those issues, there are certain elements, but one is PGS implementation, and with that also to clarify the difference between organic food you can buy in a supermarket, which may come from anywhere in the world, and the CSA model, which is having this direct link between consumers and producers. We all have a busy life. Some of us have children. If you have children in primary school or even in lower school, you need to go, you bring them to school and you collect them to school. So the idea is to do it a one-stop shop so that the delivery point of the group is in fact in the school. It means for parents who are busy, it means a gain of time. It means also the possibility to have pedagogical activities by the teachers around fresh, seasonal, local food. And it brings an aspect of conviviality, of exchange between parents at the school, which is not only on the children and with the friends, but on a larger scale. It works very well.
And about summer, because I thought about it a lot, it's a great idea, but we are not able to solve summer because schools in Czech Republic are closed 2 months.
Schools provide the space as well for the delivery point. During summer, the CSA continues in the same way, and you have, depending on the school, a way to negotiate with the direction or with the neighbor or with whatever, so that you have a different place or the same place during the... what we've been succeeding to do in our school, for example, is we have a key of the, not of the school, but of the external area where we can still have the delivery point during the summer. It's not possible everywhere. This is the ambition, okay? So it's not only you two, it's with everybody, okay? It's consumers and all together with the farmer. We are in a partnership, not a relationship, a partnership. In order to do that, we have to make sure that there is effectively a charter, and that this charter is respected, and that we have the capacity to discuss it. It has a lot of value as such. Here is an example on the price, because it's sometimes you have reactions saying, yes, but this is it's organic, therefore it's expensive, and so it's not for me. Whereas when you look at everything that is being provided through this partnership, produced by the farmer, but also provided in terms of social contact, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of health, in terms of taste, you then realize why there might be sometimes a price difference. As Eva said, there's also hard work because usually less mechanization, and there are the full price is included, which means there are the negative externalities which are not counted in the rest of the food price are not there. As such, the PGS reinforces, as a structured process, reinforces the strength of the CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, in the relationship, the knowledge of each other, the respect for one another, and the mutual understanding. Now, and that's why you're here, it's for the practical. How did we do it? As we have our charter, okay? We have the charter that everybody signed, but the charter is a generic document. It's saying, in the principles of organic agriculture, in the principles of a good relationship, etc., etc. So we started from our charter, and we tried, by discussing with eaters and producers, to refine the elements that are presented in the charter into some sort of a standard. We did 2 meetings to discuss those standards, like meetings, like 2 times 3 hours of discussion. What did we agree there? Mostly, we did agree of what we didn't want to see in our CSA practices. I will come back to the standards. Then on the process, the PGS process, we went to look everywhere. So here you have examples from Brazil, Nature et Progrès is from France and Belgium. You have IFOAM, which is international. You have a lot of experience in the French CSA network, the Miramap, which is the partner of this project, of various forms of PGS. And we decided to, from that inspiration, to adapt it to what suited us, our own way of working, our own ability. And it's the same for me to be here. It's not to tell you what to do, it's to say, this is how we did it. Take what you want, take what is appropriate to your own situation as an inspiration. But each PGS, every one of those, is different. The similarity is in the principles, the 6 principles that Eva talked about. Common vision, transparency, horizontality, learning processes, trust, and what's the last one? I always forget one. I don't know which one I forgot, but the 6 that were listed just before. So, and based on all that, we said, okay, we will do this type of process, it suits us. It's very similar, our process is very similar to the one from Nature et Progrès, but which was our main source of inspiration. Which, by the way, because that was a question before, and so I'm just answering one of the previous question, is functioning since 40 years as a full alternative to the official organic certification. So it is possible not only in Latin America, in Africa, or in Asia, it is possible in Europe, within the European Union. There is one system, the one from Nature et Progrès, which is completely a complete alternative to the official certification. They are not allowed to use the word organic or biologic, but the standards, it's way beyond organic. I mean, it's beyond organic. They are more requirements in the Nature et Progrès standards than in the European organic certification. So it is possible in Europe. But we didn't want to go the Nature et Progrès way in terms of their standards are very detailed. We started from our 2 meetings and what we don't want to see in our practices, and then we directly went to farm visits to test, okay, what are we able to see on a visit? What are we able to not to see? How can we refine the process so that it suits the way we are working, our level of trust within our network as of today? And through this interaction between the farm visit, the reflection in the office afterwards, we defined our process. Our process has 3 phases. There's one phase before, there's one which is linked with a visit, and there's something that happens afterwards. I will rapidly go to the 3 phases. So the before, let's say at the start of the process, there is a form, and that's what Eva said. You need to have a database of what is the producer doing, who he is, etc. What are the groups? Because usually we have several groups for one producer, because we try to have small groups. What are the groups? What are they? Where are they? How many people, etc. Okay, so there's one questionnaire for the producer. So yeah, I have several. It's not very long. It's 9 pages of questions, but it takes, according to our producers, not me, according to our producers, it takes between 15 minutes and 25 minutes to fill in. Yeah. And it gives the identity card of the farm. There's another thing we do before that we distribute to the groups of that producer, which is to ask people in the group to reflect on the way they are organized and on their partnership with the producer. Well, it's in French, I have only 2 examples. It's just to show that there are tools and that those are not complicated. The questionnaire, the identity card, it is shared with everybody that is coming to the visit in order to facilitate the visit. So there are questions that you don't need to ask when you are on the ground. This one is not shared, but it is, we ask each group to have a discussion within the group so that the people, because not all the group, not everybody from the group is coming to the visit, so that the persons coming from that group to the visit, they have an idea of what the other thinks, not only what they think, but what the whole group thinks. And then we have the visit. During the visit, the first thing, we ask for confidentiality. The people that are doing the visit are going to have a very deep conversation between themselves and with the farmer, with another farmer, and maybe people from the network, for example. And we say, okay, this is, we create a membrane of confidentiality. What is going to be discussed there will only be able to go out to the rest if everybody that is there agrees that it goes out. It is very important in order to have a real discussion without taboo. And in order to do that, people sign a document. It's not only, yes, let's be confidential. No. Everybody signs this paper, which is a confidentiality document. Then the process on the farm is we ask the producer to rapidly say what is his project, why is he producing, what, where, and how. So a rapid presentation, a verbal presentation, and then we go around, and it is very interactive. And as I said before, we tried that to say to everybody, there are no taboo question. If you leave a PGS visit with still questions saying, hey, I'm not trusting this or that, it is your problem. You have to be, it's an element of individual sovereignty. If you have a question, it is the moment to ask it. It is not when you're going back as a customer, as a eater, back to your group to say, hey, I think there was this thing, but I didn't ask, or I don't know. No, if you have a question, you ask the question. It is very important. It is, but you ask it in a manner which is not judging or aggressive or controlling. You ask it in a form where the objective is to understand what is happening. Understanding. And so the way the questions are supposed to be phrased is really something when I organize the visit, I spend usually 10 minutes at the beginning really to explain this way of framing. The trust that we want to build is based on a willingness to understand and not a controlling, powerful. It's horizontal. Everybody has the right to ask a question, and but everybody should ask those questions in a nice way. In order to help both the eaters and the other producer, because there's always at least one producer and at least 2 or 3 eaters. That's really the minimum. Usually I try to organize a date where you can have between 6 and 10 visitors at least, because you can have a real discussion based on many different visions, but not too much, otherwise it becomes unmanageable. So, yeah, sorry, I'll let you translate.
The minimum?
The minimum, I try to have the minimum is 1 producer of the same field and 2 eaters and 1 person from the network. Usually the minimum is these 4 people. And to help, we have listed you have two to take. Yeah. We have listed, and it's this one and this one, the subjects that we think can be important and related to the production and to the partnership. So you have some agronomic parts. You have some things looking at energy. You have something looking at work satisfaction, health and quality of life. A number of things that are related to revenue. It's the modality of negotiation. It's the economic and social stability. It's the production efficiency and efficacy. You have things linked with the diversity and the taste of the produce and of external relations. External relations locally, external relations with your consumers, transmission of knowledge towards the outside, etc., etc. So this for me makes the clear distinction between the organic certification and a PGS. In a PGS, you're able to include the elements, all the elements that have an influence on your partnership and that can be important. One example, in an ideal vision of agroecological practices, some people say no fossil fuel use at all. But then so you say, okay, only hand tools and so on. So you go for the energy footprint limitation. But how do you combine that with the efficiency or efficacy of your production and with the health of the producer? So these aspects, you need to look at them. You cannot say, oh, he's using a tractor to do his raised beds, for example. That's bad. No, well, why is it done? What are the reasons? We had, for example, in one of the visits, one producer said, I used to only work with a small motoculteur, I don't know the name in English, cultivator, a small cultivator. And he said, but I couldn't manage it anymore with my back. And he's only 35, 36 years old. He said, I had to buy a little tractor. I could not. And when he explains it, it is better for the people. It is a good way for the eaters to understand, okay, there was less mechanization before, there is more today. So we could see it's not going into the right direction, but actually, otherwise he would have stopped. So it is going in the right direction for the partnership to be able to continue. And it's all those issues that we are able to discuss that if you only look it from the outside, will not ever be taken for their reality, the reality of the producer and the ideas, sometimes the ideals that some of the eaters, consumers may have on production. So we look at all this. There is the same sort of issues or different issues, but in the GASAP PGS, we look at how the producer is organizing his production, what is his relationship with his eaters. We also look at the group and how the group is organized, what sort of commitment, what sort of solidarity within the group, what sort of solidarity with the producer, is it respecting the advance payments? Is there an annual discussion and an agreement on the price, which is then negotiated and fair between the producer and the groups, etc., etc. So we're trying to look both at the producer side, at the group side, and then at the partnership. Okay, so and that's again a difference between what you can put in a PGS and the organic certification. It's looking at the partnership, looking at both sides of producing, consuming, or eating a relationship. I distribute these papers at the beginning of the visit in order to remind the people of all the topics that are included in the charter, actually. Because this is a translation into 2 graphs, list of the whole GASAP charter in a concrete manner. It is not to reach a score. Let's say if this is 0, this would be 10, and we are scoring the group or scoring the producer. It is not the objective. The objective is to have an overall look and to say, okay, because at the end of the visit, there is a discussion. And in this discussion, we will not be able to discuss everything. We will have to discuss the most important elements. And each one is asked to reflect on what are the most important aspects of everything we have discussed that I want to go deeper into. And this helps, this is a tool to help people to think and to concentrate on the issue that is the most important for them while having the global vision. These are a few photos from a visit. And for example, you have the tractor example here. It's a small one, but it's much bigger than the one you had before. You can eat. No.
But
But this is the discussion at the end. So it's a real, you go deep. You have the producer, and you have the visiting producer, and you have the eaters, and the producer says that this part is really the one that make them go one step beyond, and that's a song of madness, but it's go thinking, okay, there are things that may need to evolve on my farm, and for the consumers, it is the same. It is, hey, maybe we could do something in order to improve our partnership, to make it easier for the producer and better for us. So this is really crystallizing the learnings of the whole visit. But that's not the end. During that discussion, we try to note everything and have a discussion of what can be important, what could evolve, what could be a conclusion, what could be a recommendation, etc., etc. And that feeds the visit report. Okay, that discussion feeds the visit report. And it is very important to formalize the report, the visit into a report. After that, so there is the report, and after that, a few weeks or a few months later, we are organizing a commission meeting. And in that commission meeting, we will look at several visit reports. So there will be producers and visitors from several visits. And we will review the report and say, okay, is the conclusion that is written or the recommendation that is written in the report clear? Is it in coherence with the charter and everything we decided within the PGS process? Are there recommendations for change? Immediate change? Or are there recommendations for change, let's say, in a longer term? For example, if we had found pesticides on the field, which we have not until now, it would be, okay, within 1 month we do another visit to verify that this is all finished, otherwise that partnership will have to be put aside. But for some things, it can be, okay, we've seen this, we've agreed that there might be possibilities for evolution, and we will come back next year or the year after to verify that there has been a change. It's only after that commission meeting that there is communication that goes outside the group, based on, are there elements within the visit report, within the commission meeting, etc., that we collectively decide that should not be publicly available, and for the rest, then it is made publicly available and communicated on a larger scale to the groups. So it's been 3 years we started. We have 2 seasons of PGS visits behind us. What are the results? Certainly a better understanding from eaters and producers about the reality of one another. One unexpected result is collaboration between producers. Farmers, at least in Belgium, they usually don't visit another farmer. Everyone works on his side. By the PGS visit of one another to the other, some of them realized that they had complementary production and that it would make real sense to collaborate. So I do the carrots, you do the cabbage, and I put into my baskets your cabbage, and you put into your baskets my carrots, for example. because you're not good in doing everything. And this sort of collaboration, also for logistics, happened, and it was not there before. A new social contract, we're probably not there yet, but there's been improvement and proactive changes. For example, many producers are very bad in communication. They don't have the time to do that. It's not their profession. And during the visits, this element comes up. And there, some eaters, they say, hey, but I have a journalistic background. I'm fast to write something. If I call you every Monday morning or every second Monday morning, you give me 3 information about the farm and the produce that we will have. It takes you 10 minutes on the phone, maximum. It takes me 5 minutes to write it down, and I send it to all your group. And there are things like that work now since 2 years, where there was no information from the producer to his group on a formal manner, and now it functions since 2 years, because that was one of the first actions that was taken after the first PGS visit. So things we did not expect are in fact improving the information, and therefore the strength actually of the partnerships, and therefore the hope for the sustainability of this way of functioning. Thank you. If you have any questions.
I have 2 questions. One is, one of those requirements that you mentioned is that there should be, during the farm visit, there should be at least 1 producer, at least, I don't know the number of visitors.
Two eaters.
2 eaters. Do you mean the 1 producer that is the one that you're visiting, or 1 extra?
One extra. So you have the visited.
Yes.
And you have a visiting. You need to have a professional eye during the visit. So,
yeah, this is my question, like how, because for us, most of us as eaters, we are not aware about the agricultural systems. We don't know how things work there. So we would have to rely to great extent on some other professional who can tell us actually what should we look at during the process. So how does this work? Because you didn't talk about this.
Maybe 3 things. One, and that comes from a producer from Nature et Progrès with many years of experience. He said, don't underestimate the power of the naive question from a consumer. It obliges the producer to often go at the root of why he's doing something more than how. And that's the strength of the PGS process for me. If it is clear the why, the how will follow. The second thing, although having another producer is essential to check on some, or maybe not to check, to make sure that the answer that is given by the producer is not trying to manipulate the consumer, even we are in a trust basis, so it's based on the confidence that the answer will be the real one. Having another producer means the answer will, if it's trying to hide something, it will not pass. So that's the second element. And the third element is these papers, where the agronomical part is a small part actually of the visit. This is true overall. It's especially true because most of our producers in the GASAP network are also organic certified. Not all of them, but 90% of them are organic certified. So we don't need to verify the organic quality for most visits.
The question is, the work of the network must require a lot of time, lots of effort. You influence the policy. So is it really based only on voluntary work, or are there fees paid by the CSAs, for example, to contribute to the work?
We're looking for subsidies. We have CSA fees, and we have voluntary work. So we have the three of them. Let's say the organization of the association part, we succeed to get subsidies. My work was on a research, as I explained in the beginning, maybe you were not there, but I was financed to do a research, and while doing that research, I could work on doing installing the PGS for the GASAP network. So it was part of it, but not exactly. The CSA fees, each producer pays a fee for membership, so it's a membership fee to the network, which is equivalent to 1% of his sales through the CSAs. So let's say if per year you're selling for 30,000 euros through CSA, and the rest you're selling through a shop or whatever, or you don't have other, then you pay a fee of 300 euros to the network. Each eater pays a fee of €1 per month for the network. So not each family or each share pays, so it's 12 euros per year to be member of the network. That gives to the network, with the number of people we are, etc., around between 10 and 15,000 euros per year. That allows for extra work, things we don't want to have subsidies for example, policy influencing. We want to be free to do these sort of things based on our own resources. Okay, so that's a very important part. And then the third part, in each CSA you have volunteering work to organize, to coordinate, etc. And we have in the network various teams that are voluntary, that are helping the network to function. So you have the English is wrong. I think it's a board of directors, which means le conseil d'administration. So I was on the teams. There are teams. So we have a few teams. One is, of course, the conseil d'administration, board of directors. One is following especially the relationship with producers. One is following especially the creation of new groups. And one is supporting in everything that is communication for the network. We had a team which was very motivated to work on public policy influencing, but now it's more with the board of directors.
People, I mean producers and eaters, they pay directly to network or via their group?
People pay through their groups, and producer, and the group, it's the same for the group is collecting for the group, giving to the network. The producer is giving directly to the network. And the payment of the membership fee is the condition to be able to vote on the General Assembly. The membership has been voted only in 2015, so it's quite recent. Before, most of the work of the network was voluntary.
You have this collaboration with schools, but there are people who don't have children, so they don't go to schools, but they work in companies. So have you thought of making the pickup points in companies?
We have one group that works like that, only one. We think it is a very high potential because people are there. In reality, something is not working with that. I don't know what, but it doesn't develop in the way that we thought it could develop. But you need to try. We only have one, and it's not a big group, surprisingly. And it's in a building where you have many associations. So you could think, hey, these guys, they will be motivated. Very little. Very surprising.